Stop writing sad things where bad
I
things happen to
can't.
good people. Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I am your host, Michael Vadney, and today I am sitting with returning guest, Ryan Skeffington, author of the Infinite Existence series. Welcome back to the show, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk again.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you back out. Since last time that you were on, you now have two books out. Very excited. We're going to be digging into what you're working on now. We have a whole bunch of questions to get through, mostly just kind of shooting the shit and seeing what we can find around here. And then you will actually be back on the next episode where we will be digging into character creation as far as novels go, which I'm very excited to get into as well.
Yeah, I love getting into the weeds, so very excited about that.
Nice. But for now, the first thing that I actually wanted to ask you, now that you have two books under your belt and you are working on more, I presume, at what point in your writing journey did you start to feel like you were an author?
Oh man, that's a great question. It probably was early on, after the first reader's feedback, because when you are a writer and you are creating worlds and you're creating stories and you're putting words on page, you feel like a hobbyist, and maybe there's a little bit of imposter syndrome there, that maybe I'm not a writer, maybe I'm not a poet, maybe I'm not a musician. But the first time your art or your craft gets an audience, it adds a little bit of realism and substance to what you're doing. And that's probably the best way I can describe the feeling of I felt like a writer.
When I started going to beta readers and they started giving me feedback, and I was like, oh shit, other people have seen this. It's real now. It's not just me playing around.
It is one of the continual best feelings about creating art that I've found. It's akin to athletes having fans in the crowd cheering for you when someone witnesses your art or your craft and they give you applause via feedback or reviews or Goodreads or Amazon ratings, some sort of feedback for what you've created and put out into the world. It is an almost unexplainable feeling to someone who hasn't done it before, because there's a deep sense of satisfaction that comes from that. And it's just so much fun. But on the same ticket, but opposite side of the coin, critique and feedback can be really difficult to internalize, take with a grain of salt, because everybody's perspective is different. And it's not so much critiquing you as a human being, but their experience with your art. So, double-edged sword of that wonderful feeling of sharing your art with the world.
Oh, definitely. And I do have some questions getting into how feedback involves in your process, because we talked a little bit about that last time.
Hmm.
But before we get into that, I actually kind of curious, what would you suggest to people who are even further on the journey than myself or even yourself, who still don't feel like they are an author, like they're still struggling with that imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I would say define what a writer is. List all of the things that a writer does, and then make yourself a resume. Put all the things that you're doing in your craft and write it out, list one by one, and compare left versus right. Oh, a writer puts words on a page. A writer edits. A writer shares their art. A writer does research. A writer Googles new words. A writer reads. And if you do 80 to 90% of the things that you think a writer does, I would say you're qualified for the job, and you can call yourself a writer. Um, there is a framework that a guy that I follow, his name is Alex Hormozy. He's big into sales, but I use his frameworks for uh, engineering, business, and personal craft. Is you don't gain confidence by shouting affirmations into the world. You gain confidence by building a resume of undeniable proof that says you are who you say you are. And so doing the thing over and over and over and over again until no one in the world, especially yourself, can doubt that you are who you say you are is
I like
the
that.
key to confidence for me, at least.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a really good idea because then even if you make that list and you feel like, oh no, I'm falling short, I don't have these six things, it
Mhm.
also lets you know, like, oh, if I do these six things, I have a goal, I have a path, I know concretely what I need to work on so that I can have this feeling in my heart.
Absolutely. When you bake
I
a
do like
cake,
that.
it's got 5 ingredients and it follows a process. You don't need to add in extra stuff or else you won't have a cake. You just do
Yeah,
what you outlined in the recipe, and that makes you what you are.
I like that. Wow. It's as if you've already thought of these things before. You answered them so off the cuff, so smooth. I'm impressed.
I sit with these thoughts daily. So when I'm on the treadmill, I'll listen to just multiple different sources of motivational audio, business audio, and then audiobooks. So constantly consuming media that aligns with the personality and goals that I want to get out of my life. So it's a constant cycle of positive reinforcement for the goals in life that I want to live. And if there's something that I'm feeding myself that misaligns or is misaligned with what I want to do, I just stop consuming that content because I want to only consume things that feed the goal. And it builds confidence because you're doing it over and over and over again repeatedly.
Yeah. I know we're getting a little like off topic as far as like books and stuff goes, but there really is such a huge advantage in building that trust in yourself where you're like, this is what I want to do, and just taking steps to achieving that. And every step that you achieve in that, you feel more confident because you're making progress in the direction that you want to be going in, and that makes you more confident to move on to the next step and to the next step and eventually the next goal and the next goal, which is very useful in writing.
There is nothing so confidence inspiring than keeping promises to yourself. And another phrase that I have kind of adopted, more molded, and morphed into something that I like is it's okay to lose days. It's not okay to lose weeks. And so an entire year is just made up of 52 weeks. If you win every single week, then you have 52 wins under your belt.
That's
For
such a good way to
fitness,
think about it.
for working out, I was a yo-yoer. I would go really hard for 4 to 6 months, working 5 or 6 times a week, and then I would take 6 months off. And so I would back and forth, get close to my goals and fall away from my goals. And 2 years ago, I said, "Hey, what is a weekly goal that you can win every single time?" And it's 3 times a week. And I go to the gym or do some sort of physical fitness, walking or running outside 3 times a week. And I haven't missed since April of 2023. And that can apply to writing, where it's okay if you don't write every day. Life happens and life is crazy and you get pulled away. And sometimes you're just tired and you can give yourself a little bit of forgiveness. But if 2 days a week you can sit in front of the computer and do something dedicated to the craft of writing, it doesn't have to be words on page. It can be researching your outline. It can be reading a book on writing craft. Dedicate 2 days to something about writing as a hobby, writing as a profession, writing as a second job, whatever you want it to be. You can stack those wins and slowly over time build yourself up to 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and end up with the reality that you envisioned a year ago by putting in the work.
Man, I was not anticipating this episode to just be so motivating and uplifting, but I'm here for it. Like this totally makes sense, especially for like the who you are and the kind of the self that you put out into the world, all about like self-improvement and just trying to improve your life and make yourself better. I love that. That's
Yeah,
really cool,
there's
man.
nothing that gets me more excited than coaching and teaching and trying to help other people, because that's really fulfilling to me, because I know how much it has positively affected my life getting mentorship and coaching from other people. And I see how much immense joy and progress I've gotten in all the different hobbies I've partaken in, whether it be woodworking or photography or writing. When people have invested in me, my life's gotten better. And so I want to return the favor. I love quotes. Quotes are my favorite thing. Denzel Washington's got a great one. He said there's three phases to life. First, you learn. Second, you earn. Third, you return. And
I like
I'm
that.
I'm advancing that in you never stop doing the previous levels. As long as you keep learning, you'll keep earning, and the more you earn, the more you can return. So I live by that philosophy every day of get a little bit better, make a little bit more, and you can give back to the world in even greater percentages the longer you do it.
I do not mind the little nuggets of wisdom. It's nice to kind of encapsulate them. Sometimes people say like they're too cliche or they're too simple, but that's kind of the point. It's just something small to remind you of the bigger picture, the bigger idea. It's just a place to start, and then you really expand on it to like what does this mean when actually applied to your life. The big one for me is, we may have talked about this before, is the classic Marcus Aurelius. I really like the one, is this what I was made for?
Mm,
And the whole quote that he is going through, he's talking about, is this what I was made for? To lie under the sheets and be warm in bed and sleep. Is this what I was made for?
yeah.
And I think about that almost every morning when I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't really want to get up. I don't really want to get up and get
Hmm.
that bread today. But that's what I was made to do. I was made to get up and achieve the things that I wanted to achieve.
Hmm.
I think about that a lot. Man, we're getting heavy. We're only like 10
No,
minutes
this is
in.
great. This is so fun. This is why I do these conversations. These are my favorite things to talk about. Another
Nice.
one is Steve Jobs. He said the
Oh,
world is made up by people no smarter than you. And so the reality that you live in was made by somebody else. If you want to live in a different reality, you have to make it yourself.
oh, I haven't heard that one. I like that.
And it provides a little bit of permission to have agency over yourself and your surroundings. That's
Yeah.
one thing that I have gotten better about, but struggled with in my early 20s is when I wanted something, I was always waiting for someone to give me permission to do it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but the world isn't going to grant you permission. So you just have to take the first step. And, as long as you operate within the bounds of being a decent person and the laws of the land that you live in, you really can do anything.
No, it makes sense though, because like we start out as children and we have permission from our parents to do everything. They tell us what we can and can't do in a lot of situations. And that's like the guiding posts of our universe. And then eventually, at some point, we transition to, oh, there is no person for that. Like even at work, like in your jobs, in your daily life, like yes, you have a boss, yes, you have people you have to report to, but a lot of times it's, you can just do things and that will be okay. You don't need to wait for someone to hand it to you.
Yeah, I was able to join Chance Dillon's launch live stream for his debut novel, Mercy. And they were talking about gray morality in characters. And they were talking about how it's always just, I think, a good person who's going to do bad things, or maybe it's a bad person who does good things. And for me, most humans are very gray because you have the opportunity to be who you are and do both. At any given point, you can choose the good or the negative action. Most people won't find out about those actions. And so you are the only one who knows where your level of integrity lies at any given point. No one knows if you break your promises to yourself. And that's why keeping them is so important. So when the big ones come around, I've proven to myself this is the type of person that I am. I'm not going to choose the negative decision because that's not who I've built myself up to be.
Yeah. Way to bring that back around and actually tie it into the books and novels and the reason we are here. I
It's just
applaud you, sir.
thank you, thank you. Logic and reasoning is just one big circle back to writing.
I'm okay with that. Speaking of writing, I'm actually kind of curious, were there any other stories before Lost Souls that you potentially could have taken to publishing? I know that Lost Souls, like that particular story, was very special to you. It was a
Mhm.
message to your father, and you also had, I don't remember the band's name, but you also did it across one of their albums. Was there ever any point where a different story may have been the one that you took to publishing, but then Lost Souls won out?
Lost Souls and the foundational idea of what would happen if the government had Magneto's power was the very first idea for a literary piece of fiction I've ever had in my life. Other than the short stories we wrote in elementary school, I haven't had a single thought of I should write a book or I should write a short piece of fiction. I've done lots of technical writing and nonfiction writing and LinkedIn posts, but going back to the permission thing, I never thought I was a creative person. I was always the STEM kid. I was always the kid who was good at math and engineering and liked video games. I wasn't, not per se allowed, but that archetype was frowned upon in my household. And so I've never felt like I had permission to explore creative endeavors like writing. And so Lost Souls was that would be a cool book. I should write it. And taking agency into your life, giving yourself permission to do things, that was the foundational idea.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's really cool. So, hmm, how do I want to phrase this? So, would you say your life as you were growing up then, were you even a consumer of art, or art was just not part of your life at all?
Art was something that I used for entertainment and passing the time that I did not critically analyze and only consumed once. Until I started writing, I always tell people I only watch movies once because I know it's going to happen. And then I started writing and I started to get into the intricacies and the nuance of foreshadowing and metaphor and allegory and understanding all the effort that it takes to make a piece of art. Um, because I had that internal empathy for the creator of said art, I started to listen and rewatch movies with a creator's eye, and definitely give it its time of day and appreciation that I think the artist would want their art to be received with.
I remember I was. Did you ever watch that series on Netflix? It was done by, I think, Wes Anderson, but it was a series of short stories by a different author. I wish I could remember his name. A lot of them were taking place in like India and stuff like that, and they're very like nuanced short stories that he adapted into episodic show for Netflix. And every single episode was just so layered, and there was just so much satisfaction in just peering behind the veil, seeing how the sausage was made in those stories, and seeing like, oh, this is foreshadowing. This is this. Like there are parts of the story that aren't told in dialogue. They're not told to the audience. You just consume them by the background of what is happening. And I feel like that's the joy that you find when you get into reading and writing and digging into stories.
hmm I did a rhetorical analysis of a song and its associated music video when I was a freshman in college. It was the only English class I took in college, and I've really enjoyed the assignment. I had a great time diving into the lyricism and the metaphor and the allegory for the song. It was very focused on veterans returning back to America and not finding a home within their home and being cast aside. And it really pulled the creativity and emotional, I guess, catharsis from the buried creative inside of me. But then I never had anything reinforce that afterwards. And so I never got that second step of, oh, maybe this is something you like. Because right after that, it was civil engineering and thermodynamics and physics and magnetism and electricity. And there was nothing to say, hey, keep going, keep exploring this. This is something that you put a lot of effort and passion in. You got an A on the assignment, and 19-year-old Ryan is like, hey, I got an A on the assignment. On to the next one.
Yeah. No,
So,
that makes sense, especially with like engineering, which are very like rigid, very difficult courses that you have to pass to get on to the next one because it's a long road and it's going to be bumpy.
yeah, there's always a right answer. And if you get it wrong, there are severe consequences.
Yes, yes, especially in engineering. Oh yes. They emphasize the importance of that a lot.
We had a professor who he would not give partial credit because he said the world doesn't give you partial credit. If you mess up, people die. And I was like, oh,
God,
okay.
that's heavy.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
that's
And
a
it's
lot.
very
Like,
real.
yeah, like I get it. He's not wrong, but
Hmm.
damn.
This was a drilling class. I'm a was a petroleum engineering student. Drilling for oil and gas wells means you dig a really, 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 really deep hole into a cavern, or rather a rock formation of high pressure, high temperature fluid, liquid and natural gas. If you mess up, things like the movie Deepwater Horizon can happen. You have a uncontrolled release of pressure and temperature, and when it's 4,000 pounds at 350 degrees, you're really not going to get up with all of your fingers and toes if you're anywhere near an accident like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. Like, it makes sense to emphasize that importance. I'm actually kind of curious, has your experience like with teachers like that in college and your career in general, has that influenced your writing? Because I feel like that comes across a little bit with the weight of people's decisions and the things that they have to do. Like, your main characters, multiple of them are different kinds of like engineers that deal with very dangerous or potentially dangerous materials.
Absolutely. One thing that I always, when watching TV shows or movies or whatnot, um, criticize or call out, and maybe this is me just being a little stinker, is how non-fragile, how durable humans are in the shows and the movies. It's like, the main character gets punched in the face, falls down, and like falls into a concrete wall and dents the concrete. And I'm like, they would be dead like three
So
times
dead.
over. So dead.
So dead.
And so humans are both very durable and enduring creatures, but extremely fragile. And so when I'm creating weapons and science and quote unquote magic systems, it is very influenced by the fragility of the human body. And so when you create a gravity enhanced weapon, it's going to do an immense amount of damage. Um, just using a general term of like a pulse cannon, humans cannot deal with the power that comes from a shockwave. And so when you have the negative consequences of an extremely powerful shockwave, it definitely, I've been told, adds to a little bit of goriness to the violence. And I don't mean to be extreme or grotesque, because I don't want to be over the top. But my quote unquote magic system or science is fundamentally as close as I can get it based in reality. And so the consequences of the tech is, this is what will happen to humans. They'll get messed up real bad.
It's the reality of violence. I have this. I don't think I have it right here. Oh, I do. I'll knock over the whole pile if I do that. There is this series by Brent Weeks called the Lightbringer series, and it is not an inherently violent book. It is high fantasy. There is a lot of violence that does occur in the same way that you would find in like Stormlight Archives and stuff like that. There's battle, there's fighting, people are killing each other. Um, but the violence is very grounded in that series. And at the end of one of the books, Brent Weeks says, like, I do not have experience in any of these things, but I learned about the realistic expectations of violence by reading this book. I don't know if you can see it in the stack here, but it's called Meditations on Violence. And I would definitely encourage anybody who is looking to portray not just like the physics of violence very well, but also the mentality of people who are in violent situations and like what that does to all of the chemical soup in your brain when you're in a violent moment. It's a really good read for accurately portraying that stuff, and I highly encourage it to anybody. Brought to me by Brent Weeks.
I do my very best to stay out of situations where people can get violent, because I understand the very serious and negative consequences of violence. I've always found that people who are closest to choosing violence as their first option haven't experienced it or really fully understood it. Um, I got a concussion one time because I crashed a dirt bike. And it is one of the weirdest moments of my life because I remember falling. I remember getting off the track. Someone came over to check on me. They said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And then I woke up in my truck. The dirt bike was loaded in the back of the truck and I was sitting in the front seat. And I don't remember going from on the track to my vehicle, which was a couple hundred yards away. And so, like you said, all the stuff that messes up um, inside the human body, and I try and portray that in Eternal Dreams, where I use Iron Man as a reference, and kind of just one of these critiques is when he gets punched by Thor, his brain is moving at 300 miles in the reverse, and it hits a wall. He should be dead. Um,
Oh yeah, there's
and
no amount of
so
padding that's going to help you there.
that's the upper limit of like, don't go so far as like, hey, you have mechanized suits, but when they bounce into a concrete wall, they should not be able to stand up for at least a few minutes. And so there are some scenes in there where after the big weapon, the device, the climax happens, the main character's on the ground and everyone's coming to help him, and they're like, well, I don't want to dive too far into spoilers, but they're like, he is not okay. He has to get carried out, and you eventually recover because the body has wonderful ways of healing itself and regaining consciousness and assuming homeostasis. But for a good portion of after the use of violence, he is not okay.
Like you were saying earlier, it's incredible how fragile our bodies are. Like it
Hmm.
takes just the right amount of pressure at the right place, and boom, you're dead, or you have no arm, or you are permanently injured in some way. That
Hmm.
yes, you can survive, you can make a life out of after that, but it's not going to be the same.
Understanding, I think, circling back to writing,
Yes, bring it back.
understanding the human experience as I've grown older and met more people allows you to create deeper characters because you can apply all of these different experiences that you've had to different people's character arcs and stories. And we'll get into that in the next episode.
Oh, most definitely. I was talking a little bit with JL Odom about how, yes, it is a great idea to start writing when you are young, get that experience in. But it isn't until you're older and you have that breadth of experience that you
Hmm.
can really sprinkle in to your story in general, not even just characters, just like experiences, just sights that you have seen.
Hmm.
The more experience that you have, the more things that you have come across, the more you'll be able to put into your story. But
Hmm.
you're right. I should shut up. We'll save that for the next episode and we'll really dig into it then.
I'm a professional yapper, but I got to make sure I stay on target so we have 2 episodes to film.
Don't worry. We got this. We will make it happen. Viewer, this
Perfect.
is for you. We're going to shut up. But we're not going to because we have other things to talk about. Something I actually did want to ask you from the last episode or the last interview that you were in. Uh, you were talking about how when you read and when you're consuming a story, you actually have a really hard time picturing it, picturing what people look
Correct.
like. If there's someone described as brunette with blue eyes, you're like, yeah, that's like 500,000 people.
Yep.
Um, I'm kind of curious, how do you find the story that you're creating then? Because a lot of people they try to picture it, and I'm kind of
Mhm.
wondering, how do you find it?
I can feel the motion of a story. And so I don't like dialogue heavy stories where the character isn't clearly doing anything. And so that's a struggle of mine. One that I do really like is the Red Rising series. Lots of motion, lots of action, lots of the main character exerting themselves on their reality. And so when I'm writing a story, I utilize like reference images to give me an idea of who the person is visually, and I'll go back and add what they look like after the second draft. because for me they are a like a mannequin essentially, but they are a 5'4", 120-pound mannequin versus a 6'10", 400-pound mannequin. Like, I understand relative body proportions of these characters because that proportion has an effect on their reality. I can do something a little bit different with the guy who's 6'10" and weighs 410 pounds than what I can do with the main character who's 5'4". And so motion and action and existence within their scenery and interactions with the other physical bodies of other characters is where I start. That's the physical movement of the scene, and then I'll try and build in the tension and the conflict between those characters after that. Because once I have the made up blocking of where everything is, and a good way to give the audience a way to visualize this is if you've ever seen a 3D animated movie before all the color gets added, it's like a three-dimensional space with blocks and just barely any definition of the figures and the humans. That's where I start with my scenes. And then I'll create the tension and I'll say, okay, where are they moving in relation to each other to increase tension, to pull away tension? Are they close to each other? Are they across the room? Is there a table in front of them that separates them and creates a little bit of distance? And then I'll go and add all of the what does it look like? Um, does the uh, does the thought of them wearing red or blue have anything to do with this character? I just wrote a novella. The main character is a Titan in Eternal Dreams, but this is 15 years before she was a Titan, and she has fiery red hair. And so when she wears a bright red or burgundy dress, that's metaphorical. And so I have to make sure I incorporate the color of her outfit in certain scenes where I want the metaphor to hit. But if she's just shopping in the college commissary, it's okay if it's blue or green. It really doesn't matter to me. That's not an important detail. And so that's not something I focus on. Other authors, other writers may love knowing every single detail about their character. I let the people who have imaginations fill that in themselves.
Yeah, that's something I think Brandon Sanderson is really good at, and I know he's a very verbose writer. Like there are
Hmm.
way too many pages in some of those books,
Yep.
but at the same time, the way he sets a scene is he gives you as little as possible to fill in the rest yourself. He will tell you
Hmm.
that it is a bare concrete room devoid of light or passion. And then boom, you can fill in what that looks like. And it
Hmm.
just took one sentence and you know what the scenery is going on right there.
Yeah.
He tells you like the feeling. That's what
Hmm.
a lot of good authors do is the feeling of the space, the feeling of what someone looks like they had a dour face or they angry wrinkles and stuff like that. Like that tells you so much about them by conveying the emotion, because that's why we read. We don't really read to be like he turned his sword 10 millimeters to the left and it stabbed him above the
Uh-huh.
third rib. No, that's not why we watch story or read stories. We read
Yeah.
them because they make us feel things, and that's what
Hmm.
we want.
Yeah,
No, I
the
like that a
uh
lot.
the white of the knuckles tells you exactly how that person's feeling and what they're doing with their hands.
Yes. I'm reading How to Become a Druid by Mike Molman right now.
Oh,
I
very
think
cool.
I think that's how you say his last name. Yeah, and then there's this part very early on where the main character, he's clenching his fist and unclenching his fist, but he that's not what Mike said. He said he was bleeding out the frustration through clenched hands, and I'm like, oh, Mike, that's a great line.
Are you a
I
writer or
like that.
something?
I know.
Spectacular.
I know. I was really impressed. Like, as soon as I got to that part, I'm like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm gonna read this and enjoy the heck out of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One of my favorite metaphors from Lost Souls is age soaked into the fabric. Like
That is a
like an
good
old
line.
cloth that's getting washed and it loses its color over time, but you still wear it because it's soft and there maybe is some tatters on the edges. And someone pointed that out and I'm like, man, I
Yeah.
wrote that. Chalk
Yeah.
that one up for the resume.
Oh, absolutely. That just tells you so much about that cloth. Like, it also tells you like the durability of it. Like, there's a lot of direct things you can take from that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the fadedness, the threadbare nature of that cloth, but it also just
Mm-hmm.
tells you it's enduring. It's been around for a long time and it continues to be serviceable. And that says so much.
It also tells you about the
Good
people
job.
who have to wear old clothes.
Yeah. Man, we're getting into some like really good questions and answers today. Thank you for joining me, Ryan. I'm glad we're here
Absolutely.
again.
You are adjacent to an author today.
I am. Thank you for being that author I could be adjacent to. Not an application of the show title that I thought I'd ever be using, but I like it. Um, but something I also did want to ask you, we teased a little bit earlier about feedback.
Mhm,
I will say you famously had very little feedback for Lost Souls before
mhm,
publishing. I remember you and I talked about it last time, and you said only like 3 or 4 people had even seen it besides yourself before you
mhm.
went to publishing. And then you did a full 180 on Eternal Dreams. Last that we were talking, you had worked with I think 5 or 6 editors on it.
Yep. And
Yeah,
6 to 8 beta readers.
yeah. So, what I wanted to ask you now at this stage in your journey, what role does feedback, whether from peers, editors, or readers, play in progressing yourself through the story and now through a series?
Mhm. It is the biggest tool that has ever elevated my writing, bar none, period, end of story. And each person and each role serves a different function within the writing process. Um, I met my developmental editor and my line/copy editor with Eternal Dreams, and I will be using them for the rest of my writing career because I know how well I work with both of them now. Um, to give a small negative experience to share and highlight how positive good editors and teammates can be. I hired an editor to do my final line edit. Like the story is done. I want you to go through and I want you to add periods and colons. And if a word is a little bit clunky, help me choose a better word like that. We were at the publishing end, sent it to them in, I think, August. And they sent it back on New Year's Day and said, this story, I can't edit this story. It's not done. And I'm like, wow, what a horrible experience. I just gave you $800. And so they stopped about 60% of the way through the story. And I think they just missed a good portion of the story, maybe due to personal life, maybe due to not reading book one. Um, and so that's a struggle of if you get someone who's on your team and they're not the right fit for you, it can crush your spirits. It can make you second guess everything you've ever done and make it what's the word I'm trying to say? It can make you second guess if this endeavor is worth it. And so that's why I focus on the overwhelming amount of positivity because I know what it's like to be in the depths of wanting to quit just because of one person's words. Um, and so I said, hey, we're not going to quit. We're not going to let them be the defining editor for this story. And so I went and got 2 or 3 more beta readers. I went and did another developmental edit. And I found another line editor, copy editor. And I said, hey, how much do you charge to read book one? Because I don't ever want to hear, what does this mean? Or what do you mean? Or I don't understand because they didn't read book one. And I don't write book two with mutually exclusive from book one. You can't read book two without reading book one. And
Yeah,
someone
that's
told me
really
that,
hard to jump into the middle of a series.
yeah. And someone told me they write books so that it's okay if you skip book one, you'll know what's going on in book two. And I said, that's blasphemous. Don't
How?
ever talk to me again. Yeah, I don't understand. But I guess you just reintroduce all the concepts and the characters and everything that happened. So if they read book two before book one, it's okay. And I'm like, I deny that as being an acceptable practice. Rejected. And
I can
so,
see some value in, I don't know, like you do have to reintroduce a little bit. Like you do have to remind your
mhm,
audience who these people are and a little bit of what they've done, but a full reintroduction that you don't need book one at all. I think the only way to do that is really like episodic writing, like Conan the
mhm,
Barbarian or like
yeah.
Herman P. Hunter. He writes kind of episodic novellas. I could see you being able to jump around in those maybe a little bit,
Hmm.
but for the most part, you need to read the previous stuff before you keep going.
Yep, absolutely.
That's wild.
So pulling off that tangent and back on to how important these people are in my life and my writing, um, I found people who are willing to tell me the truth with kindness. And that is the most important factor of having a good teammate for me, at least. Some people can be like, I just want you to be as blunt and straightforward as possible. I want someone who's willing to consider my feelings before they say something because it makes me excited to read their feedback. I'm more willing to accept it. I'm more willing to go in and say, hey, this is a me and you thing. We're doing this together and we're going to make this product as good as we can. And the most recent review on Eternal Dreams was the quote was, I can't state enough how much Ryan's writing has improved. And that's a little bit on me, but it's a lot to do with all the people that helped me along the way. And so back to giving back to other people and trying to be a light and a positive voice for other writers is I've had people support me more than I deserve. And it is the reason why Eternal Dreams is as good as I think it is, and why I think book three will be an ever increasingly higher quality product because I think I've gotten better from a writer's perspective at the skill set of storytelling, of plot crafting, and I have a better team that can help me polish the quote unquote final product into something even better.
No, that's great. Like, I think that's something a lot of people don't really think about when they get into indie, like indie author, indie publishing, and stuff like that. Is indie doesn't mean you can really cut the corners. The big difference between indie publishing and traditional publishing is it is your responsibility to find those people that are going to help take your story from here to there. And that means it's all on you. You have to go out and find them. You have to pay them. You have to figure out whatever kind of bartering relationship you want with those people so that as a group, you can make this book as good as it can be. And I know that's not a very popular opinion sometimes because a lot of people do get into indie publishing because there are lot less barriers to it. But I think I'd put forth that there are just as many barriers. Like, yes, you can get across the finish line a little easier, but if you put in that effort to find those people that will elevate your work, you will be just as good or better than what traditional publishing can pump out.
You are
You just need to
solely,
put that in.
yeah, you are solely responsible for the quality of your product.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
That's the final component of it is if you put something out and people don't like it, it's your fault.
With the caveat that not everybody likes everything. You
Yes,
are going to
in
bounce
a
off some people.
in a matter of taste, the customer is
Yes.
right, and it doesn't have to be for you. But in the objective sense of a quality product, which most readers expect in a
Yes.
novel because they're spending their hard-earned money on it, the quality of your product is your responsibility.
100%. I can definitely get behind you on that one. Well, you brought it up a little bit. The third book. Is that what you're working on right now? You also brought up a novella. Really, I'm just
Yeah.
asking, what are you working on right now? I want to know.
My mind was made into mush after finishing 7 beta reads and 8 rounds of edits on Eternal Dreams. I needed to escape this plot line. And I told myself I'm going to finish the Infinite Existence trilogy before I start on the next one. Um, but I needed to step away. And my developmental editor, who I'm slowly becoming fantastic friends with, she made a suggestion in one of the scenes, excuse me, with one of the scenes with 2 side characters. And the side characters were sharing a moment, and one of the characters standing behind the other character says, I've been waiting a really long time for this. And my developmental editor said, it would be more powerful if you said, I've missed you. And with I've missed you implies this whole backstory of their lives lived together, other than this open-ended, this one character's had these thoughts about this one situation. When you add that one single sentence of personalization, you build a backstory. And I think that's another great segue into our episode 2 about characters, backstory, making who these characters are. And so it's like, oh my God, that's a great idea. What does that imply if these two characters, knowing what I know about their backstories, crossed paths in the past? And so I wrote a novella about them meeting. And one of the characters, Holix, is the Titan. And so it's her Titan founding story. And so she is the Titan of Purity. And so the novella will be called Purity.
That's cool. I'm excited for that. So that is what you're working on right now, or is that something that is complete?
It is written. It's gotten a developmental edit. It's got a self edit, and it's had 2 beta readers so far. I'm open to more beta readers if anyone wants to read a 30,000 word novella about a young woman's experience with an overbearing perfectionist parent or mother, and finding her identity and her purpose and her place in the rings, all creating all of these stories within the infinite existence world, similar to the Cosmere. So everything is connected. And if you read Lost Souls and you liked Eric's as a character, he makes a return in Purity.
All right, guys, you heard it here. At Ryan, get to him.
At Ryan Skeff on all the social medias, ryanskeffington.com, and Ryan at teamskeff.com if you want to email me.
That is actually perfect timing as we're running out of time on this episode. But don't worry too much, people. We're going to be back real soon to talk about character creation. But until then, Ryan, is there anything else you want to tell the people before we sign off today? Where they can find you, where they can find your books?
Absolutely. My books can be found on Amazon, but you can get signed hardcovers at ryanskeffington.com. I'm on all those social medias. My messages are open if you'd ever like to chat about writing. I check my Kindle Unlimited pages read every single day. So if you read it on Kindle Unlimited, I'll know how many pages you read today. But just a big thank you to everyone who has ever read a single word of one of my works. It's extremely rewarding and fulfilling knowing that someone is sharing in my work and finding some sort of enjoyment or emotional catharsis from what I've written. So thank you to the reader.
Oh, that's beautiful, Ryan. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming back onto this episode. I really appreciate that.
It's always a ton of fun. We'll catch you next time.
Of course. And folks, remember, until next time, let's be author adjacent together. See ya. Dude, that episode was like wholesome and enlightening and just so many things that I was not expecting. I thought we were just going to shoot the shit.
I've had enough depressing conversations about loss and grief and tears and sadness. I was like, I gotta change it up. That can be the intro of the story, or the intro of the episode. I've got to change it up.
There we go. I might do that. We are still recording.
Yeah.
I gotta say that. Stop writing sad things where bad things happen to good people.